Welcome back to Secret Weapons. My name is Mark Johnston, and if this is your first time here, this is a YouTube channel that focuses on guitar demos and reviews, as well as studio tips and tricks for leveling up your home recording, writing, and production from a guitar player's perspective. So if that's something that appeals to you, I would love it if you'd hit that subscribe button and stick around for future videos. Today, we're taking a look at the massive new update from NeuralDSP, the Quad Cortex CorOS 3 update. So it's finally here, the oft promised and long fabled and awaited plugin compatibility for the NeuralDSP Quad Cortex. It's finally here with like a small asterisk being at launch today. Compatibility is there for archetype Plini X and archetype Gojira X. Those are the two plugins currently operating for the Quad Cortex, with the rest of them to kind of roll out over the coming months and year or so. But I'm a pretty firm believer that this new update for the Quad Cortex is actually a lot bigger than just getting your plugins onto your Cortex. So let's talk about kind of everything in this new update and why I think it's so noteworthy and why I think it really is a more than the sum of its parts update. So let's get into it. First things first is, of course, the big sexy part of this announcement, which is plugin compatibility. And what that means, if you're not aware, is you can take the plugins that NeuralDSP makes, the archetype Plini X and the archetype Gojira X, complete with the stomp boxes, the amps, the delays, the reverbs, and the modulation in those devices, in those plugins, and you can now pull up the presets, like the factory presets, the artist presets, as well as any presets you make yourself on your Quad Cortex. Like if you're somebody like me, I've recorded a lot of guitar tracks, a lot of songs using archetype Plini X specifically for social media posts, for other companies, for kind of general songwriting. I will reach for that plugin frequently. And the fact that I can now take the exact sound versus approximating that sound with me on the Quad Cortex is a big deal, because sometimes you just can't take a laptop to the gig. Sometimes you can't take, in my case, a Mac Studio with a monitor on a fly gig or on a road gig with you. And being able to take exactly those sounds in the Quad Cortex is a huge deal. But it's not just access to your presets. It's actually access to all of the individual modules from those plugins. So every individual stomp box, every individual reverb and amp model and cabinet and IR capture, those are all now available in the Quad Cortex to mix and match with other plugins, as well as the kind of plethora of devices inside of the Quad Cortex in the first place. On that intro track, I did things like pulled up a Plini preset that I really liked, modified it a bit, and then just took out the Plini reverb and put in like NeuralDSP's modulated reverb, because I felt like it fit the part a little bit more. The ability to kind of like reform those plugins is really useful. Another big benefit to this process is the fact that like I used my Chase Bliss Thermae in the middle of a Plini X preset, something that you could not have done with the preset or with the plugin version of this sound. With the NeuralDSP plugins, if you wanted to kind of insert a device in the middle of the chain, whether it was external gear or just other sounds in general, you would have had to basically pull up an iteration of the plugin, deactivate sounds beyond a certain point, insert whatever that new effect was, and then bring up another instantiation of the plugin and kind of pick up where you left off and process the rest of the module. So you'd have to run two completely separate iterations of the plugin to do what you can now do with ease and instantly in your Quad Cortex. The fact that I can put my Thermae, something that is not a software device at all, in the middle of one of my favorite kind of big ambient clean sounds in Plini X is pretty kind of substantive in terms of what I can do and what I now want to be able to do with these plugin sounds. But plugin compatibility actually goes farther than just your presets on your Quad Cortex. All of the utility stuff in the NeuralDSP plugins, things like that doubler, that transposer, the gate, and all of those things are now available as modules on the Quad Cortex as well. You can do really killer stereo widening double tracking stuff with your Quad Cortex on any sound, any preset you have on there. You can now grab that transposer from the plugins, use it exactly, sounding exactly the same, with the same tracking, the same low latency, everything on your Quad Cortex. And now you can, like, as you heard on that intro track, assign it to an expression pedal. That lead part at the end of the intro song, I have the kind of plugin transposer as a first in chain block in a preset on my quad Cortex. And I have it linked to an expression pedal sitting on the ground in front of me right now. And I just was able to kind of like jump a fifth above my root note at any given time during that lead part. And that is something that would have taken a lot of doing to kind of set up compatibility with an actual plugin that I can do seamlessly and quickly with my quad Cortex. There's some other really cool updates to CorOS 3 as well, though, and some stuff that I think is as potent, is as important, both separate to plugin compatibility, but also takes those plugin sounds and explodes them into something way more robust than their software-based counterparts. And the two big pieces here are the blend device and the introduction of side chaining. So starting with blend device, you can basically drop a module anywhere in your signal flow in your quad Cortex that will basically introduce a clean signal from any input on the device that you want. So say you've got your guitar plugged into input 1 and it runs through the transposer, plugin transposer, or a pitch shifter, or a fuzz pedal, or anything early in your chain. After that, you can drop in a module that will let you blend in your clean guitar tone in parallel and kind of balanced with whatever you've done to process that signal so far, which is a really interesting way of creating like your dry tone with that transposer fifth above in tandem with one another, or with the ability to assign that to an expression pedal to blend between them. You could also, in those contexts, pull from a different source. You could pull in audio from your secondary input or an effects return and be able to kind of like blend that in, whether it was a different instrument source in general, or some sort of processing through an external device that you have set up in one of the loops. It really does create a lot of flexibility for kind of introducing your clean tone post cabinets, post compressor, post overdrive, whatever that is. You could even do something like send through an external overdrive and blend that cleanly in after an overdrive that you like in the device, allowing you to run them in parallel with one another, an analog kind of circuit as well as a digital recreation of a circuit in the Cortex. And secondarily, you have sidechaining, which I think is maybe the most potent new update to this device. It's not its own device necessarily. It is an update to a bunch of devices, including the gates and a bunch of the compressors in this device. But in my opinion, and as you heard on that intro track, it gets a little bit more interesting than just being able to sidechain to your own input. You can also decide where that sidechain comes from, being any of your inputs on the device. So for that intro track, what I ended up doing was sending a line output of just a simple clap sample in my DAW out of a line output from my DAW into the return 1 input on the Cortex, and then put a 1176 style compressor really late in the chain on a pretty heavy preset, and then sidechained it to that return, allowing me to get that kind of EDM style pumping sidechain on that guitar, driven not by the internals of the quad Cortex, but by an external drum source. So there's some other stuff to look at and some other consequences of all these new building blocks that are being kind of put together here. So I'm gonna stop talking. Let's go to our top-down camera on our quad Cortex and let's start walking through some of these new updates and some of the new sounds that you can develop with CorOS 3. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below, what is the most kind of substantive new update to CorOS 3 in your opinion? Are you excited for the plugins, or is sidechaining the thing that really has your kind of gears turning in terms of things you can do? Okay, let's start off with the most kind of like basic stuff of the new CorOS update. So in order to pull up a new preset from your plugins, all you have to do is tap your status bar up at the top, grab your presets drop-down menu for the different types of presets you have, go to plugin presets. Here we have our 2 plugins that we have compatibility for, and those are, of course, Plini X and Gojira X. We're going to start with Plini, and you have your kind of default, which is the same exact kind of sound as when you open up like the plugin for the first time, or with no presets enabled on your computer. And from there, you of course have your stomp boxes that you can kind of grab, and they're all pre-assigned, which is really nice because otherwise in the plugin version, you would have to be assigning and MIDI mapping everything to a MIDI controller hooked up to your computer. And of course, you have that transposer available. Which we will get back to later. But let's go ahead and not grab that. Let's grab a actual preset. One of my favorite rhythm guitar presets that I use all the time on the plugin version of Plini is from a buddy of mine named Clayton King, one of the best guitar players on Instagram right now. You should follow him if you don't already somehow. Right hand riffs is a go-to of mine. It's just a great sounding preset. And I love this as a starting point because not only does it sound like vicious and rad right off the bat, but because you have all of the kind of tools at your disposal that you would have with the plugin version, you can do things like grab that transposer, bring it down a fifth to give yourself that kind of like baritone sound. As well as things like your that pre-delay, the delay that comes before, as well as your doubler, which I really love. So yeah, right off the bat, really, really great stuff to have immediately available to you, which I really love. But let's go ahead and say we've made a couple of changes that we like. Let's go ahead and bring down the bass just a bit, give ourselves a tiny bit more mid-range. And say, we really like this sound and we want to kind of expand on it further, but we like what we've done so far. All you have to do is hit that save button like you normally would, pick a spot in your library of like user presets and just title it something new. And now I have it as a preset in my normal preset folder, which is great because it's easy to back up and it's easy to kind of like take with you and convert and move from Cortex to Cortex unit if you've got more than one, or if you like need to back up all of your sounds and everything. But let's stay on this one and kind of use this as our basis for kind of other ways we can modify and expand beyond what is normally in the plugin version. A thing that I really love here is the ability to kind of swap out different devices. So in this, we've got this kind of big singing double lead. Let's actually take our double out for the time being. And let's say we love this sound, we want a different delay. So in the plugin version, you are saddled with the delay at hand, or you can basically mix a delay in post after the kind of like reverb and everything else using an external device in your DAW. Here, all you have to do, hit change device. I could jump over to the Gojira plugin and grab the Gojira reverse or delay. Let's grab the Gojira delay for now. Or we could go an entirely different route and just grab a proper delay from our library of like normal sounds and use cases. So let's go and grab let's do something that you could not even appropriate or like approximate, and grab our reverse delay, a dual reverse, something that is not in that Plini sound, and give it a nice long tail on both sides. Or something that is completely undoable in a different context. Let's grab our effects loop number 2. And now we have our Chase Bliss Therme. Unbelievable, really cool. Let's grab a preset. Let's save what we've done. Actually, let's leave it there. Let's go ahead and grab a preset I made for that intro track, which I titled creatively Plini May because I was feeling rushed. And this is a beautiful, clean sound with that Therme in a Plini preset. But if you're paying close attention, you may notice that is not the same chorus that is normally in Plini. This is the Gojira chorus. The ability to kind of like take your external devices, your favorite pedals, outboard gear, whatever it is, and stick it anywhere in the context of one of your kind of like neural plugins is a really nice kind of additional consequence of moving these tools from a kind of self-contained piece of software into a device like this. But of course, it goes further than that. You can do things like take that transposer that we were talking about and map it to your expression. On that intro song, the kind of like lead at the very end, and all you have to do to be able to kind of create that kind of thing is grab that transposer block. Doesn't matter where you are. It could be in any of your existing presets or whatever. And let's go ahead and reset the parameters to default. So now we have our transposer. So you could have it in stomp box mode and just stomp it on and off. But instead what I want to do is go into our submenu control stuff and assign, go into our submenus and assign expression. So we are going to assign it to semitones. We're going to set the minimum of the range to be our unity. And then we want the max of the range to be, in this case, a fifth above. So now we have and just like that, you hit save, and now you have that transposer from your plugin available with a pitch jump capacity or kind of fluid semitone by semitone walking. So you do have, let's turn off our delay and reverb. So yeah, really, really cool. The reason I like using the transposer over maybe like a pitch device or something is I just feel like for chords and everything, it tracks really well. I feel like the tracking on the plugin transposer is one of my favorite and most consistent and low latency options. Which is really, really cool. So one final thing I want to touch on with the plugin compatibility stuff is I've gone ahead and pulled up a preset I made for my kind of NAMM performance this year with the Ernie Ball booth. I haven't opened up this preset in a while, and I've decided it'd be fun to kind of go in here and go, what else could I have done with this device? So I have like the 87 style compressor here. Let's change things up a little bit. Let's go ahead and grab our compressor and instead make the jump over to the Plini compressor, which I think is quite nice. The Plini one's great because it's two things and nothing else. You just have compression level and or compression and level. And likewise, if I wasn't feeling that amplifier, I could go in here and go, let's grab Plini's clean amp, which I think just sounds wonderful for this kind of like. And in my kind of parallel cabinet setup that I have, let's grab one of those cabinets. And once again, let's give it the Plini mono cab treatment. the ability to kind of grab any sound you like from the plugins and drop them into any existing preset you have on here is really, really handy. And especially as they start to roll out more of the plugins with some of my favorite neural sounds, things like that tape delay from the archetype Mateus and everything, it's going to get really, really powerful. Okay, so we've jumped back over to that RHF preset that we made earlier, but I've gone ahead and replaced the chorus with a Legendary 87 side chainable compressor. So you go into your devices and you will see Legendary 87 mono and stereo, and then the Legendary 87 S/C, which is what side chain stands for in this context. And then we can go ahead and kind of give it a listen. And as you'll hear, we're going to get a lot of compression because it is operating as a compressor in its position in the kind of like workflow of your preset right now, which means it is compressing based on what it is seeing specifically. So in order to make this more of a, what I'm trying to do here is create a kind of almost like a pumping effect, like an auto swell kind of thing. For source, we can grab input 1, which means it is going to react to the input of my clean guitar tone coming in and not what it's hearing right now. So. So you get these big dramatic swells in this, which is really, really cool. But if you want a more characterful version of this, a thing that I have found to be really, really exciting in this context is let's take out that compressor and instead replace it with the envelope filter with sidechain enabled. So now we have an envelope filter. But as you can hear, we're not getting a lot of filtering, a lot of movement in that filter because it's being hit by so much volume from our amplifier. So let's go in here, set that source to input 1 again, and now we have If you've never spent a lot of time with this envelope filter, I recommend you do because it has some really, really cool applications, including operating as a low-pass filter instead. And you can set that to be a little bit less resonant and have a lot more decay and a nice long attack, basically giving you really big low-pass filter swells. Okay, let's take a look at the dry blend module that we talked about. I have a kind of like clean sound that I set up for the intro track, wherein our Plini compressor is set really aggressively. I love how squishy the Plini compressor gets, but you don't always want that full squish sound. And as you can tell, there is no dry blend in this. So let's create one by going to the next block over. We can go down to our utilities and introduce our transparent blend. And this is going to be sourced at our input. And so now we have the ability to kind of like move between our fully compressed and our fully uncompressed signal. So by setting it somewhere in the middle, we now have access to all of that heavy Plini comp compression while still getting the kind of like articulation and kind of breath that your dry guitar brings to the table. And once again, in this context, a thing that you can't do in any other version of this is, let's go ahead and assign our expression pedal to that blend control where the maximum of the range is about 50%. So now we have the ability to go from fully and completely compressed here to a nice kind of even blend. So take it back for your kind of like leads where you want all that sustain and squish. Really, really handy. Another and slightly more evident use case for this kind of transparent blend option is when you've got something really kind of like grimy and high gain. Here we have a preset from Archetype Gojira called Stones, where we are doing everything from running an octaver, an overdrive, a distortion pedal, and a chorus all turned on ahead of our amplifier. What I've gone ahead and done is added that clean transparent blend right here and set it up so that it goes up to 39% dry signal. So here you have kind of like all of the chaos. And the ability to kind of like blend in ahead of that chorus some clean guitar for a little added clarity if that's what you want. of course, you can get creative and say, I only want it to hit that second distortion. Moving forward with your quad Cortex, I would love to know kind of what is the most interesting piece of all this for you. So let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, thanks for watching.